This is really, really interesting stuff we're talking about here, and so I do urge the listeners to check this stuff out for themselves. Don't believe the hype. Certainly don't believe Wikipedia, and investigate, and also read the book. Read Victor and Wendy's book, and also their two books, and also Leslie Flynn. Now we're going to stay within the legal framework now, which is appropriate considering Victor's profession, and we're going to talk about a lady called Sally Morgan. Now I had a big rant about this. I made a YouTube video, and I also wrote an article about this subject.
Right.
So this happened actually here in Britain, and
yes.
Interestingly, when part one of this program was broadcast on the 30th of September, Sally actually appeared in Oxford at the New Theatre. So if anyone in Oxford was listening to this program, they were missing Sally's show. But she's doing her thing on stage when we go to air on that day. So that's
right.
But Sally Morgan is a very famous, a kind of celebrity psychic. And then she was. Someone wrote an article about her in the Daily Mail, which is not my favourite newspaper in the world, but even by the Daily Mail standards, this was a very, very poor article indeed, and it had terrible consequences. So, what do you know about that, Victor? And Wendy?
Well, we got some emails and links to the articles about this case. We've got extracts from the Daily Mail and what actually was decided eventually. But I think what happened is the insurance, the Daily Mail's insurance, did not allow the matter to go to court.
Oh, right.
So they settled out of court on
they settled out of court. They settled out of court, and but certain precedents were created. One is that now, see, there is a recognition of mediumship, that mediums are professionals. Now, this kind of acceptance did not exist in the time of Helen Duncan. And Helen Duncan, the court, by conduct, showed that this mediumship is all nonsense. Okay? But not today. This is very important precedent created. What's her name again? Sally Morgan. And not only that, as I said earlier, now anyone who wants to attack or criticize a medium must be specific. If the attacker, if the critic says, "Oh, this medium is a fraud," he or she has got to show what aspect of the demonstration is fraudulent.
When previously,
this is very, very important.
Yeah. So when previously they could have just said, "Oh, she's a medium."
Oh, yeah.
Now they can't do that.
That's right. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
The interesting thing is you'll find a lot of the critics will just say, "Oh, this is how she could have been fraudulent."
Yeah.
You know, she could have done this, and then they say, therefore she must be a fraud. But this case, it's not enough to say she could have done it. You must prove that she did do it.
Yeah. I mean, the author of the article, Paul Zenon, who's a well-known skeptic as well in this country, what he did was what happened was in September 2011, Sally did a show in Dublin in Ireland, and some people called a local TV station to complain that they heard a voice from the theatre control room predicting supposedly psychic readings. Now, what the skeptics are saying now, this has been done before in 1986 by a guy called Peter Popoff, who was a Christian televangelist who did these sort of miraculous healing sessions. Now, the thing about it is, what happened in that case was somebody actually went into his audience with a radio scanner and actually picked up the transmissions to prove that this was happening. Now, no one did this with Sally. What they did was, this hearsay, which is all it was just hearsay, was sort of like metamorphosed into fact by those who, the skeptics, who claim, who see themselves as the ultimate adjudicators of what fact is. Which is very ironic, I think, and it shows the self-deception that is the skeptic. And so basically, this article was written relating this as fact, and of course it wasn't. But the Sally actually, what happened was in the end there was this out-of-court settlement, and she won £125,000 in damages from the newspaper plus costs, which she richly deserved.
Yes, of course. Yes, yes.
And the skeptics kept very quiet about this.
This is very, very important case, you know, Ben. This is very, very important. I know in England there are a couple of closed-minded skeptics. They're fairly flamboyant, like the Wisemans of this world and Blackmores, but these people...
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can.
We lost connection from you. You were talking about the Blackmores and Wisemans of this world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they cannot just say that one medium is a fraud. They cannot do that anymore. The effect of the Sally Morgan case is very, very important. In the old days, some 10, 15 years ago, you could hear the Wiseman and others being very, very nasty, the way they used to describe mediums. Not anymore. They just cannot say a particular medium is a fraud.
Yeah, and they're keeping... I mean, I checked the skeptic media over this issue, and they've gone very quiet about it. They hardly mention... There's a guy called Martin Robbins. He's the only one who's even mentioned Sally Morgan, and he's... even though he's a skeptic himself, he said he agrees that she deserved to win. She deserved to win. She said that it was a major skeptic fail. They completely blew it. And I actually put a warning on a radio. This was before the Daily Mail article came out. There was a radio show, Righteous Indignation. I actually put a comment on there, because this guy Tristan Swale, who's been a guest on this program actually, he was basically talking about this, and I put a comment on the box warning him, saying, don't make any firm statements without evidence. If you think she's doing this, because he basically said the same thing that Paul Zennon did on his radio show, and I said, well, look, go get someone to go in with a radio scanner, get the proof before you start making accusations. And so I kind of out-skeptic the skeptics, I think.
That's good.
You're doing a wonderful job there, really and truly. It takes a lot of energy. When they're organised and they're so dedicated to what they're talking about, it's like dealing with fundamentalists.
They are fanatical. I mean, we were talking about this last week, how we're dealing with an ideology. And I mean, it's not what they say about themselves is actually not true. It's not a description, it's a slogan, and they themselves don't realise it. They can't see it themselves. But I mean, and the result, and also we're dealing with some people who are really quite deeply unpleasant people here in some cases. Now, Sally Morgan's experience, what happened was when this article was published, she received threatening emails. Of course, they were always, it's always on the internet where you say, they're too gutless to ever say anything. That she had death threats. She had threats of rape and mutilation, threats of torture, threats to plant a bomb in her house, and it shook her up really badly, as it would anybody. And especially sort of like a woman who's spending a lot of time on her own. I mean, she has a husband, but she's often on her own. And she lost weight, and you can see she actually stopped eating. She lost weight. And it's really quite. These are the people who, on the one hand, will are part of this movement, this community, who talk about science. They come on TV. People like Wiseman and Blackmore who come on TV and they talk about science and reason and evidence. And there are other members. I'm not saying that Wiseman and Blackmore would ever do Sally Morgan, but there are people who follow those people who, in some cases, are great big fans. I mean, James Randi has a big following and he's a bit of a cult figure, actually. Who, when they're on the internet and they're on their own, will turn into these, behave in the most monstrous manner towards others.
The same thing happened to Rita Gould. You probably heard that story from Michael Rolls, that Rita Gould was one of a brilliant materialization medium, absolutely brilliant. And she received death threats and gave it up.
Oh, it's really, these are skeptic, wicked, you say wicked terrorists. I mean, there are skeptic terrorists and skeptic Nazis. And brutal.
Because they're terribly unreasonable. Even when we get, you have to make a distinction between the low level of closed-minded skeptics and they're idiots. They cannot raise a proper complaint. They don't know what to say, what to do. But people like Professor Richard Dawkins, for example, I said, well, look, if you don't accept the paranormal or the evidence for the afterlife, the onus is on you to show where, when, how, and why the evidence is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the onus is on you. You just cannot ignore it as if it doesn't exist. Now, I mentioned this even to Randy, because we used to email some years ago. I said, look, you have to show why the evidence is not right.
Yeah.
You know, the onus is on you. You know, because he used to say, oh, you can't prove the negative. I said, that's rubbish. I said, go get some advice from your lawyer that you're not making sense. We presented the evidence. We say the evidence is substantive. We say the evidence I presented is scientific. It is objective and repeatable. And the onus now is on you to explain to the world why what I presented is not correct.
It is absolutely true, and they don't understand this. What they do is they don't. What they do is instead, what they do instead is, I'll give you another example. Richard Wiseman. I mean, I know Richard Wiseman would never send threatening emails to a medium, but what he did do is he appeared on a BBC interview saying that he would like to see more legislation and regulation of psychics and mediums, which is a very, very worrying and disturbing thing to say.
Yeah, it is.
Because what he actually means is he would like to, he's using these sort of like euphemisms, legislation, regulation. What he actually means is ban. He wants to actually pass laws that would ban, and he's not the only one. Randy, the others have spoken about how they'd like to see the law come down to prevent psychic mediums from doing what they do.
But you know why? This is why. I tell you why, because we are gaining. I believe we are gaining all the time. Yeah. And the skeptics who used to email me before, those disappeared. I mean, I the more I provoke them to take me on, I don't get any response from these skeptics, because I say to them, look, when you say you don't accept the evidence, go to a lawyer to explain to you what's involved in proving that the evidence is not correct. But they just don't know. The dummy ones, the dummy skeptics, they just have a closed mind and said, oh no, your evidence can't be right because there's no afterlife. That's not admissible objection.
But even it's coming from the top then. I don't know if you read, I can't remember the name of the fellow, but a top scientist said that Rupert Sheldrake's book should be burnt. Can you imagine?
He was the editor of Nature magazine.
That's right.
A major scientific publication.
A major anybody who's a scientist saying that another scientist's book should be burnt. That's outrageous.
Without proving that Sheldrake was wrong.
Well, I mean,
this is what I told Richard Dawkins and his mate Stephen Hawking. I wrote to him too. I said, look, you cannot come to conclusions before you investigate. I said, what you're doing, you're coming to conclusions before you investigate. And that's not scientific.
It's an extremely unpleasant thing that this man said. It really is, because the burning of books is the cipher of barbarism. I mean, like there's the Fahrenheit 451, the famous sci-fi book about this dystopian future. I mean, it's extremely Orwellian, this kind of language. And of course we've all seen photos of piles of the Nazis, going at the libraries and pulling out every book written by a Jew and putting it in a pile in the street and burning it. We've all seen this kind of thing, Sorry to bring Godwin's law into this equation immediately, skeptics, but it's true. And he's talking about burning a man's book because he doesn't agree with it. This is. I mean, there's a really very, very revealing radio show. There was a radio show once heard, because I listen to skeptic radio shows, and there's one guy who was talking about his daughter, and he said, because he gave the usual flannel about how we skeptics, we rigorously and openly apply the methods of science and reason to empirical claims. We thoroughly assess the evidence and study the pitfalls of human reason and mechanism. And so I brought my daughter up to be a free-thinking rationalist. And then he said, but when she grew up, right, she became a Buddhist. And
serves him right.
Yeah.
Well, Buddhism is a very rational religion.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, but what's revealing is what he said after that, because he was very upset that she became a Buddhist after he fought. And what he said then was really, really quite chilling and revealing about the skeptic mentality. He said that he regretted it badly, and if he could go back in time to when she was a young child again, he would bring her up differently. He would quote, indoctrinate her into non-belief, unquote.
Oh my God.
And no, but if the child is born and if the child is born spiritually advanced, no amount of conditioning is going to get through to her. You know?
I mean, and what's really exactly, and the thing about this, I mean, the point I think is that the father didn't understand the paradox, the contradiction in his ideas.
Yeah.
And what's more, I mean, you can go and listen to it, listeners, if you want. It's Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, number 10. It's in their podcast list. And the interesting part is 47 minutes into the program. And it's worth listening to the actual interview. He didn't understand that he was contradicting himself based on what he said about evidence, rationality, and things like that. That to indoctrinate someone into non-belief is almost, it's a paradoxical statement, an oxymoron. So,
it's interesting, in our report this week, I think for the sake of your listeners, every Friday we put out a report, an afterlife report, where free of charge, which often has clips of scientists, alternative scientists who are talking about it. And I love this quote. This one is from Tom, what's his name, the out-of-body experience, Tom, My Big Toe.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas Campbell.
Thomas Campbell.
And he said, this is not science, it's theology. That what the skeptics are coming out with is their own theology.
Yeah.
They're not scientists at all.
They're secular theology.
It's extremely chilling and revealing to hear them say things like indoctrinating people into non-belief. And what's even more amazing is that the presenter of the program, it's a panel of presenters, they didn't even break their stride. It went straight over their head, and they didn't even notice it. It didn't raise a ripple. So this is really interesting. I mean, I suppose the question we're talking about here, which Victor and Wendy are presenting the case for, the afterlife. What? I mean, everyone it's the one certainty in life is they say death and taxes, but not everyone pays tax. So death is the one certainty.
True.
One is the one certainty in life. Whatever happens, we know that our life one day will end, and the question of what happens next is surely the oldest question ever. I mean, we've been thinking about it for as long as we've been human. There's even evidence that some animals consider this question, like elephants, for example, seem to be aware of this question. So, I mean, if it comes forward that there is some kind of, if it can be sort of like rationally deduced that when we die, we don't just disappear, we don't go into the hands of some merciless God who pops up our good and bad sides and sends us to hell or heaven, or the alternative is we're just animated lumps of meat, and when we die we rot, and that's the end of us. What if there's a third alternative, which you have discussed, and what we have discussed in these last two programs? The question is, I mean, why is there this? It's almost this Hegelian antithesis, I tend to think of it as, in the sense that whenever any idea comes forward, there has to be an opposing idea generated by it. And I get the feeling the skeptics are kind of this Hegelian antithesis of this fact. But I wanted to ask you, and we're coming close to the end of this program now, but I wanted to ask you before you go, why you think there are, the skeptics are there, and why are they, what is the kind of social phenomenon of the skeptic? What is it, and why does it exist?
Look, I had to do research in this very narrow area because it's very, very important. And I found that the prejudice against the paranormal is historical. The theologians, especially during the time where they used to burn people for their beliefs, anyone who was a medium or a psychic, or anyone who supported the mediums and the psychics was burned at the stake. Now, Arthur Finlay, the great historian from Scotland, told us that between 12 and 72 and 1835, the inquisitors killed over 20 million people, and including those who were psychics and mediums. So that became entrenched in the culture, in the tradition and the history of Judeo-Christian countries. And it's a knee-jerk reaction that somebody mentions the paranormal, you reject it.
Yeah.
Because for hundreds of years they killed these mediums. Even today, Ben, today I got emails from Europe, and they said those priests are saying horrible things about the paranormal, even today.
Yeah.
And one priest I met here in Sydney was very, very upset, very concerned, very worried. I said, what's wrong? He said, well, we're losing numbers. It's the worst crisis in the history of the church. I said, what? He said, well, he said, it appears from the surveys more people are going to see a medium and a psychic on Sundays than going to church on Sundays.
Mm.
And this is true. We see it ourselves. When we drove around one morning to about 6 churches on a Sunday, hardly anybody there. The church, but only because this is an age of science. Because people today are not believing the theologians that there's something wrong with mediumship. But as I said, for hundreds of years, theologians deeply entrenched this bias against the paranormal, and those today who are closed-minded skeptics are just merely repeating what people in the past thought.
Yeah.
And this is
Combining it and justifying it with science.
yeah.
I mean, it's ironic.
right.
The skeptics, of course, reject religion, and but they'll stand. This is the one issue where they will unite, and they'll stand shoulder to shoulder.
It's fascinating, isn't
Yeah.
it? So you've got the extremes on both ends working together.
And not only that, I did challenge these skeptics when I first started to report David's materialization in my weekly report. I said I have a sponsor who came with us and saw everything, who is willing to pay anyone $500,000 to any skeptic who could show that there's fraud in what the David Thompson is doing with his mediumship.
Mm.
Because they were very hostile when I was saying, look, they're materializing, they're speaking to us with the same voice they had when they were on Earth. It's been confirmed by their loved ones. And they said, oh, no, this couldn't be right. I said, look, you either put up or shut up. Here's $500,000 for anyone who could prove that there's fraud going on. But, I said, if you fail, and when you fail, you will pay my medium $100,000 for his problem time. Since that time, not one skeptic ever raised that issue again. Not one.
I mean, it's amazing.
I call that bluff.
Well done. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And they can't even see their own sort of like falsehoods. But I think I've worked out what motivates some of them. I mean, I've been listening to skeptics talk, and some of them, I mean, I think what they do is they've got this idea in their head that that people who believe in the afterlife, it's sort of like a kind of, it's what Sigmund Freud talked a lot about this, so did Bertrand Russell, that it's kind of like death awareness, and that when you have death awareness, you're aware of your own demise. So we humans have concocted a kind of a safety net, a psychological safety net, a comfort blanket to protect us from the awful truth of our finality. Now that's, on a sense, you could say that's a very condescending attitude, and I think it's just the condescending nature of it is exactly why they have this idea. I mean, they could say, well, if people in general don't believe in an afterlife because they need to believe in it, otherwise because they can't face the idea they're going to die, then you can say, but me, I can face it. I know I'm going to cease to exist, but I'm superior because I can face up to that. These inferior people need that comfort blanket, but I don't. And it's kind of, it must be a very intoxicating feeling, that.
It is.
Look,
it is.
I put in my book I've put in I think it's in my book, 9 reasons why skeptics remain stubborn, unreasonably stubborn. Can I go through them quickly, very, very quickly?
Yeah.
Number 1, this is too technical. Number 1 is what I call the rationalization through cognitive dissonance. This means that when these skeptics hear information fundamentally inconsistent with their own beliefs, their mind tells them to reject it. Right? Number 2, cathexis is also another psychological term. This is an abstract connection, an inexplicable connection with belief. It's kind of. Number 3 is the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, where it talks about denial, similar to the dissonance, where information coming through cannot be accepted by the mind of the skeptic, so they deny everything. There is the environmental programming. These skeptics are born in an environment that perhaps taught them how to be skeptical.
Yeah.
What I mean by this is, for example, this is generally and basically somebody born in England today, or in a Judeo-Christian country, or to Christian family, they're likely to grow up as Christians. Someone born in India is likely to be a Hindu. Someone in Israel likely to be of the Jewish faith. Someone in Iran a Muslim. So the environment plays a big part in showing why we think the way we do.
Yeah.
The number 6 one is the primary motivation is money, power, and status. The Wisemans of this world, the Blackmores and the Randys, they do it for money because they want attention. They want to promote their own profession. Yeah. Number 7 is the smorgasbord argument. This is notorious with Professor Stephen Hawking and only talk about things that are consistent with their own belief. But anything that shows them they're fundamentally wrong, they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And number 8 is what I call the post-hypnotic effect. There's a critical time that it's like a hypnotist who will tell a person under hypnosis that an onion is going to taste as good as an apple. Yeah. And it gets them out of trance, gives them something, and then say, oh, look, try this, will you? It gives them an onion and says, oh, this is nice, this is just like an apple. This kind of post-hypnotic effect is powerful, very powerful.
Yeah.
And finally, number 9, these closed-minded are just basically they're spiritually retarded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It may take you a lifetime or two to come to our standard, our level.
Yeah. I mean, the status one is very interesting. I mean, the thing I talked about the wish fulfillment, being able to face in their mind resist the wish fulfillment of death. I call that MBA, Materialist Bravery Award. And I've actually created a little medal, and I've actually sent it to a few people, including Wiseman, Blackmore. I've sent one to the British Human Association. But we're running out of time now, unfortunately. But before we go, it's been great having you on, and both of you, and it'd be lovely to have you both back again sometime.
Of course, yes. Sure.
You could update us on any new things you discover and things like that. But, before we go, just tell listeners how they can find out more about you, how they can. I know we discussed this in last week's program, but we'll go through it again.
Wendy?
Yeah. Well, we've got our website, which is www.victorzammit.com. That's VICTORZAMMIT.com. Now that has the details where people can sign up for the Friday Afterlife report, which is free. All they have to do is just put their email address in the little box, and every Friday they'll receive the latest research, great videos like yours, I'm hoping, maybe or links where they can purchase videos, book reviews, lots of items that people will find, the latest items in the research. We've been doing this every Friday for the last 15 years. Right. And there's also details of the book. Our book is A Lawyer Presents the Evidence for the Afterlife. Mm-hmm. That available from Amazon UK or the Book Depository or any of the online bookstores. And there's also lots of items on the website. A lot of people go back to the website over and over again because there's lots and lots of information about the evidence for the afterlife there.
Mm. Oh, brilliant. Well, Victor and Wendy, it's been great having you on the programme. It's been fascinating talking to you. And you have a good day, and hopefully we'll see you again soon on the Hapanwo Show on Critical Mass Radio.
Thanks, Ben, for that.
Thanks, Ben. It's been lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you.
Hospital Porter's pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo Radio.